Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend Sam Clements. Sam, say hello.
John, how are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing fantastically, and according to the Census Bureau and all kinds of other economic releases that we've had recently, seems as though Americans are doing pretty well as well.
That's kind of what the majority of the data says. And, we've talked about there's always this Rorschach test element to it where you can get out of the data what you want. But by and large, stuff is kind of all right. Things are all right now.
Well, it's kind of crazy because obviously we're in the middle of a presidential election campaign, obviously House and Senate and local elections as well, but everyone's focused on the big cheese, the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And it doesn't matter what the presidential election issues are, the economy is always going to be one of them. And to hear people talk about it, pundits and what have you, they would leave you to believe that perhaps the economy's not doing all that great. At least that's what the perception from Joe Sixpack, man on the street, John Doe. However, the data that the government keeps releasing is pretty decent. For instance, yesterday the Census Bureau put out poverty and insurance in the United States for 2023, and it fell to 11.4%. which is a pretty decent decline from the previous year. So only 11.1% of people in the United States or households in the United States are living in poverty. And what's more than that, the highest percentage of Americans all time has some form of health insurance. So what's not to like?
And gas prices are, I saw last week, $2.99 was the most common gas price across the country.
I love it.
And the percent that people of their
budget...
Well,
by premium, but that doesn't
so
help me out at all.
Not $2.99 for you.
No.
The stock market's close to all-time highs.
Sure.
Depending on the week, is at all-time highs. And, for so long it felt like the stock market and gas prices determined a lot of how the consumer felt.
Well, it does, and or didn't, and I mean, historically.
In the data, it showed up if those two things, if gas prices were low and the stock market was high, consumers tended to feel pretty good about it.
Well, and why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And so stock market's high, gas is low. Chicken in every pot, people are going to feel pretty good about that type of stuff. But then some sort of disconnect happened probably about 24 months ago when people just really didn't buy into the story that the government was telling us. Mm-hmm. The government tells us yesterday that poverty is down to 11.1% in households across the country. Health insurance is up. However, what it doesn't say is private health insurance is actually down. And public health insurance is actually up, a sharp increase in Medicaid last year, and then also a decently sharp increase in Medicare. So, I don't know, does that seem to be really what you would suggest? Is that suggestive of a healthy economy or more people are on Medicare and Medicaid? I don't know about that. And then last week, the government announced we created, how many?
100-something thousand.
100-something thousand, 127, I think.
Which this number will get revised two more times.
Well, it'll get revised, and a huge chunk of that were people that are social workers, social assistants. People that work in restaurants and bars. And when you really kind of add those up, that made up a predominance of the report. So the headline numbers are saying one thing. You really delve into the data, I'm wondering whether or not the story is as good as we are being led to believe. And maybe that's the reason why the economy is stupid. That's the reason why it's a political topic. Despite the fact that what the BLS is telling us, the BEA is telling us, the Census Bureau is telling us, it's all telling us that we should be happy and we shouldn't be looking at the man behind the green curtain.
Well, there's two kind of main points, I think, with this. The first is data is hard. It's
almost impossible.
Almost impossible. I mean, I said it slightly about the jobs number. Don't even look at this first jobs number. It's useless. It will get revised two more times. I mean, ADP has jobs numbers. They are the payroll company and still can't get these numbers right. I mean, it's very difficult. They're constantly revised. Everything is revised for months and months and months on end. And also, no matter what you're looking at, the lens we look through things, we're looking bigger picture. Even when you look in the income decile, there's people in that income group that this doesn't apply to. I know people who have, the lowest quintile of earners have actually had pretty decent wage growth, real wage growth. But I know others who have had zero wage growth for years.
Yes.
So that category may be doing well. But there are plenty of individuals in that category, and this is more on the lower end than the higher end, aren't part of that. They're not feeling that. Prices may be slowing for how much they're going up, still going up, and people's wages are continuing. Some people are just getting decimated.
Well, kind of depressed now, Sam.
Well, that's just the first part. the second thing is just that people are humans, and there's human error and human emotion that goes into it, and social media and what have you, and people telling you things are worse than maybe they are for political reasons.
Well, because you sell more umbrellas when it's raining. Bad news sells.
Right.
And so, well, you're going to sit there and say, hey, firefighter, you rescued a kitty up a tree, and the daffodils are out early this year. No one's going to buy that up.
Yeah.
No one's going to buy that.
So you have those two forces. Some people actually, getting kind of screwed over with the last few years' economy.
Yeah.
Other people just hearing how bad things are. I mean, on the
so
other
you're
end,
saying it's kind of like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yes.
Or, at least in terms of psychology?
I know people who are in much better spots than they were 4 years ago and are still complaining about the economy. They have higher real wages. I mean, the percentage of disposable income they have has soared through the roof over the last few years for a lot of people, and those people are complaining as well. So it's hard to dissect what is the...
Those type of people make me sick.
It's hard to dissect who is actually getting the short end of the stick and who is actually just complaining about it and not really seeing the full picture.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, and I've talked about it. There's some video clips out there on our website, and then also a little video clip that I did for the Charlotte Business Journal where I'm talking about grocery prices. It's when the prices for those inelastic goods, those things that you need to purchase, when those go up more rapidly than the elastic goods, you feel like you're getting screwed a lot.
Yeah.
And food prices have gone up. They've stayed elevated. Any given month, maybe you'll see a little bit of an increase in the BOGOs at the grocery store, or something's on special. It's not as bad as it was, but still, it's grocery prices are a lot more than they were. I've got 4 cars I've got to insure. Mm-hmm. So when car insurance goes up 20%, that hits me a hell of a lot harder than it hits you.
Right.
And so that type of stuff, is kind of tough. So really, inflation's going to be where, you can find it, or you just have to look for it. And government today said that the 12-month inflation, CPI, is up 2.5% over the last 12 months. I want to tell you, Sam, mine's higher than that. I haven't put pen to paper on all of it, but I know what my monthly expenditures are, and I know they're higher than 2.5% over the last 12 months. So I think you're right on the fact that this economy might be a little bit more disjointed, if that's the right word, than previous economies, where some people are doing really well and a lot of people aren't doing well at all. But when you take a look at the data, job growth, fewer people living in poverty. Recently the government said that median household income has reached an all-time high. Mm-hmm. And, it really does come down to it. It's like, who's right? Is the government telling us the truth? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist person. I'm not sure if you ever saw that movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson. It comes across like a real whack job.
Mel Gibson?
Well, I know that's hard to believe. But I'll tell you this, that, previously, and a lot of people, and I've been doing this a long time, as my hair is evidence, never question the data. Never question the methodology. You always thought maybe they might monkey with it a little bit, but you never were reading data going, come on, quit screwing with me. And really, in 2024, for the first time in my 30-plus year career, and going through the monthly employment situation report, I'm getting the report going, come on, quit screwing with me. There shouldn't be that much of a difference between the household data and the establishment data. And you know what? There shouldn't have been. And that's the reason why they revised everything down dramatically. The second highest of all time since 2009, when the economy's coming out of the worst downturn since the Great Depression. Why are we having this type of problem in economic peacetime?
It's amazing.
Understand it.
It's amazing that how they calculate data is still the way they actually do it. It seems so archaic to go to these companies and ask, hey, how many people are you hiring?
How many? 119,000 companies.
And you know what? The participation rate used to be in the 70s, I think the 80s at times.
It actually never, it all depends on the age demographic. The all-time high got around just shade under 68.
It's in the 20s now. I mean, of course.
Labor force participation?
No,
rate?
the survey.
Oh,
The survey.
Go on, Sam.
No. The survey participation
Okay.
rate. So you have a third of the participation rate, close to, that you previously had. The household survey, you have either people calling your landline. I don't know about you. I don't have a landline.
I don't have a landline.
Coming by my house, and if I check my Ring doorbell and I don't know the person, not answering it.
Well, of course.
So who is answering these surveys? And this is how the government knows how much tax receipts are coming in, withholdings from paychecks. The fact that these are the two ways we're still calculating data is...
You bring up a great point. That doesn't make any sense, does it?
I mentioned it with ADP too. They are the payroll company, and they're still making predictions on this stuff.
Making predictions on the first 2 weeks of the month, sort of
It's all
job growth, calling the HR department, and then extrapolating out the back half of the year, back half of the month.
That's why, and then we get state data later, and that's where we get these revisions. But we are a 21st century economy,
Sort of.
calculating data.
Using 20th century models and methodology.
Yes.
So why wouldn't it be faulty?
Of course it's going to be faulty. You have a 28% participation rate on a survey, and then you extrapolate that out 4 times?
Well,
You think you're going to be good about that?
You're absolutely right about that, but this has been the first year where I've seen the vagaries in the two data sets and everything that's coming across seem to me to be so ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. The household survey saying this, the establishment survey, and those are all part of the employment situation report, saying something completely different. Then I take a look at the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, its employment index. Take a look at the ISM report on business manufacturing, its employment gauge, and the same thing with the ISM services, its employment gauge, and they're all saying the same thing. These are private businesses saying, we're adding people, but not as much as we were. And then all of a sudden, at some points, in some months, we're getting a 300,000 person payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't make any sense. And so when you see that massive 818,000 revision, and it's been another 253 already with the monthly, just sort of the normal monthly revisions. Since then, we're looking at 1.1, close to 1.1 million jobs, which they have taken off the system since April of last year. And so that's kind of a little bit more telling. Why don't I believe the economy's as great as it is? Why doesn't Joe Sixpack believe the economy's as great as the data's telling us? Because the data's not right.
Yeah. And, the immigration question, I mean, all the banks have talked about their revision on that 800,000 of what it would actually be.
I think Goldman said it was going to be 1 million.
But they're not reporting hiring of people that are illegal immigrants either, though. So that, and we've seen that.
They're not supposed to be hiring those people. Of course,
Correct.
They're not going to report
Of course.
that.
So then that revises it downwards if that's the case. If you net those out or put those into the actual calculation. So we're doing a terrible job at calculating data. It's already hard to do, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot in how we calculate.
And I would tell you, in terms of the poverty report that the Census Bureau does, and I wish I had memorized the number that a family of 4, what's the poverty threshold for it? It's nothing. I mean, it's if you would. I mean, that's poverty, all right. I mean, don't get me. I mean, that's poverty. I mean, that's eating sugar sandwiches. I mean, that's like you have one landline and you're not watching cable. I mean, it is about as poor as you can get. And so when you have that, you see 11.1% of people are still below that poverty threshold, which is, I mean, that's poor by Alabama standards.
Right.
You're kind of going, my goodness. And even 200% of this number, and it's some calculated number that they've come up with based on blah, blah, blah. And so when we take a look at it going, it doesn't take too much, I mean, to be in poverty in the United States. Whereas, I can sit there and go, hey, family of 4, Sam, what do you think a family of 4 should live off of? In order to live not necessarily a Beverly Hills or Bel Air sort of type lifestyle, but just, hey, we can have a couple cars in the driveway.
Yeah, the old idea.
The old idea. I mean, a steak every now and again on the grill, and you get to go to the beach for a week. I mean, how much?
I would guess it would be, I don't know, 80,000.
I mean, I would say that would be sort of probably about right. That's median household income. They just released that. Poverty's about maybe a quarter of that. What, a third?
Yeah.
A third of that?
Yeah. It goes back to inflation now. I mean, it goes back to this haves and have-nots. I mean, 60-ish% of Americans own stock. So when you see these people talking, and we've said it before, the market's at all-time highs.
Yes.
Things are okay. Well, for 40% of people, that has zero impact. And for a large majority, on top of that, people that are just own stocks through their 401k or what have you, not really impacting their livelihood on a day-to-day basis.
No. And that's
before they're pulling it out.
That's truthful.
So you don't. This inflation is great for stocks.
Yes.
I mean, because earnings go up.
Oh, it's great for state and federal budgets.
Yeah. It's great for asset holders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing with land or real estate. It tends to go back towards what the inflation rate has been.
Yeah.
So if inflation's 10%, my house starts going up 10%. Well, if I don't own a house and I don't own stocks, I mean, things have got more expensive. Owning a house has gotten more expensive.
Much.
I'm not participating in the rally of assets, and all I'm doing is that expense or liability side of my budget is going up. It's awful for liabilities, or I guess depending on which side of the liability you're on.
Yeah.
And it's great for assets.
Well, I mean, kind of at that point, you're sitting there taking a look at the majority of Americans, or at least about 40% of Americans. I think it's about 40% now rent. Might be a little bit less than that.
Which is about what don't own stocks as well.
Yeah, about don't own stocks. So those people who are renting, either an apartment or what have you, they're taking a look at things, seeing their rent go up much more rapidly than cost of a potable water. I mean, yeah, just whatnot. I mean, currently, taking a look at the last Consumer Price Index report, the rental equivalence to the primary residence was up another 5 tons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, housing prices, as you said, have gone up with interest rates. You know, ordinarily or historically, you think when mortgage rates go up, as they have over the last couple of years, housing prices would moderate or come down just due to the higher cost of buying and borrowing. And that's almost the opposite has happened. Everything's gone up, so people have been forced to rent. They're not building that equity any longer. They're not participating in the American dream, in that home ownership, the little white house with the white picket fence, all that stuff. And by the way, they're not going up when they see the Dow. You know, Dow's up another 125
What do I care?
What do I care? And so it's very easy for them to sit there and go, I'm getting screwed here.
And once you're out of that, it just gets harder to get into it.
Yes.
You know, most people buy a house, buy that starter house, are there for probably at least 5 years, what have you, build equity in that, sell it, and they have that equity that is much bigger than the amount they put in typically. To roll into a bigger, nicer house.
The inflation with the market value.
Yeah.
The forced savings aspect of
your mortgage is going down. So a lot of people end up putting one down payment in on their first house and kind of rolling that into their.
Are you staring at me? What are you talking about?
It's almost everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody typically just buys their first house and then rents it out and has a big down payment for their next bigger house that they need. So if you're not even getting that first step in, and then eventually by the time you need a bigger house, well, then you definitely can.
And if you have kids, you know, that costs a lot of money, and the next thing you know, they got to go to college, and you've spent your entire life, and you don't really have any wealth to show for it.
Yeah, and houses.
So then you're going to tell me that the unemployment rate is 4.2%, I should be happy? The CPI is 2.5%, I should be happy? Median household income is the highest it's ever been, and I should be happy? And that in poverty in the United States is lowest. As lowest it's been in years at 11.4%, and that more people than ever have health insurance, and yet you have such a huge swath of the population that's not participating in this. The roughly 40%, it's a little bit less than that, that are renters. The roughly 40% that don't have direct participation in the stock market. Maybe they have a pension plan or federal government and all that stuff. You know, they have that. You know, all of a sudden they're not feeling all that. They're not necessarily feeling the love. And then on top of that, the data, in any event, may or may not be right. They're using the same methodology that they're using 20, 30 years ago.
Before pre-internet.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of calculate the labor markets, the Census Bureau's definition of poverty is laughable. Median household income, okay, whatever.
Yeah, imagine being a few $1,000s over the poverty level.
Yeah,
hey,
you're doing
don't
great.
worry, buddy.
Hey, buddy, you get to eat peanut butter this week. And when you take a look at all of it, I really do think there's more out there that maybe meets the eye with the overall American experience in this economy. That upper quartile that you're talking about, that upper 10%, the people that have the homes, maybe the nicer homes that are going up more rapidly in price, that might have an investment
heavily
account
participating.
Might have an investment account outside of their 401k, but even if they don't, their 401k is relatively sizable, so they do feel that wealth effect when that happens. People that have some measure of assets, this inflation's been great for them. They've seen their balance sheet go up, and so they're going, okay, yeah, it's really not all that bad, but it's still a hard story to sell the population as a whole. And that's the reason why you see all these polls. You can go to Real Clear Politics, you can go to any website, and they'll tell you that the majority of Americans feel the country's moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
The majority of Americans will put the economy somewhere near the top of their primary concerns. They'll put inflation up there. So what citizens, the average Americans, telling us, and what Washington is telling us, really doesn't jibe one to one.
Yeah, and well, I know we need to wrap it up, but it makes you wonder why neither political party is actually has a plan for lowering inflation, lowering the deficit,
or even addressing addressing this.
They're
topic.
all making it worse.
Yeah.
Every plan, I look at it, and I can only imagine it getting worse. Whether it's
tariffs, whether it's taxes, whether it's any
whatever you want to do,
it's additional regulations on top of business, all of it portends slower economic growth and reduction in supply.
Increased spending from either party.
Yeah, but that's a increased amount of cash, a decreased amount of supply and goods and services. As a result, things are going to cost more money.
And frankly, I probably think it's because the loud voices in either party or in politics in general are the ones that benefit.
I tell you what, we're going to get down a slippery slope if I don't cut this off right now. And so, because I know we're both getting kind of passionate about it. So, gang, thank y'all so much for listening. We always love to hear from y'all. So if you have any comments or questions, please, by all means, let us know. You can always reach us at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. As always, if you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we got to say or how we think, you can always go to oakworth.com, OAKWORTH.com. Take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab for all kinds of exciting information, including previous links or links to previous Trading Perspectives podcasts, links to our weekly blog / newsletter, Common Sense, links to our quarterly analysis, macro and market, and all the various breakdowns there. And then our advisory services team, Mac Frazier and his gang, put some good stuff out there, as well as a lot of our wealth client advisors. So go on out there, take a look. I think you'll like it. All right, with that, Sam, anything else on this hot topic before we might even have to finish this up next week?
That's all I got.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.